Well, hello again.
You again?
Yes, me again. Me again. One of the concerns that arose last year, and I'm sure it has come forth many times in these sessions, was how do new clerks best grow into their jobs? We do have a new clerks meeting every year that is very helpful. Many of us who are longtime clerks keep coming to that because we realize we learn things from it, and that has been beneficial. But there is something different about being a clerk than merely being the person who keeps the record. There's an identity that is a part of it, and something I hope you're experiencing now. There's a camaraderie that also exists in being a clerk. Now, I have some notes here for you. You can totally ignore these, but they're there for my benefit. But you also might say, well, he's way off track now. But I want you to note that I think we need to recognize that a need has been voiced. And because a need has been voiced from new clerks, and maybe even those who have served for a while, to better understand and work into their work, we probably should look at what we can do to make that work better for them. We already have some great resources. We have a website. That clerks page is incredibly helpful. The postings from the different classes who have done it well and done it right is good summertime reading. Just, take your tablet with you to the beach and go through that stuff. It is very, very good, and it is really, really helpful. Our new manual, I'm a paper person. I hate reading off of a screen, but I love the paper. All of this is valuable. My desk has the old manual on it that's terribly out of date because it's helpful. You have other clerks, and that's really what this is about, this partnering, mentoring, is the utilization of other clerks in order to do your task better. We have Laura. We have And we'll also discover that we have a few places where mentoring and partnering is already working. And in those places, the clerk's job is being enhanced because of those relationships that are developing. And I want to stress that point. This is about developing relationships. It's not simply calling us to become better experts at our jobs, but we kind of can do this as a team. Let's talk about the need. Well, I hope that all of us have a desire to do our best. I occasionally do have the attitude, that will do, and I'm not proud of the that will do attitude, but being challenged by others and working with others usually makes me do better. So hopefully you also might benefit from that. Laura's well-being. This is another reason for us to actually care about this. I don't know how many times I haven't called her about something that I could have called one of you who isn't nearly as busy as she is and gotten help. It shouldn't be that Laura is the supervisor of all of us because we have failed to utilize the networks that are already available to us. I know that there are classes, clerks, and regional synod clerks who have readily made themselves available to people if they have a question. Howard does this. And many people have utilized Howard. And I'm sure that Laura greatly appreciates that some of the calls go that direction. But there are more of us who could be working to assist in this matter. So what do you need? Well, I think we need support in examining why we're clerks. Does anybody ask you, why did you want to become a clerk? I remember when I became a clerk in Wisconsin, it was my first classes meeting. I have no clue what I said during that meeting, but in the parking lot I was attacked by the executive team and they said, "We want you to be our clerk." And I go, "Sure, whatever, I'm new, I don't know any better." And I loved it. I just absolutely loved it, because one part of my personality, which I think I'm maturing out of, is if I'm in a room, I'm in charge. And what I saw as my history as being an elder in the past and watching clerks, the clerk was in charge. The clerk was the person who ordered and structured and moved things along, and that was my motivation. Problem was, 4 years later, we had a president who thought he was in charge. I didn't like being a clerk anymore. It wasn't fun. I didn't have my place. It would have been very helpful if I had had someone beside me to say, "Carey, your job's important even when you're not the boss." Someone who could have mentored me. Now that would have happened a few years down the road, but all I could go on was past experience of watching how things were done. Having a mentor with me would have been a very, very helpful thing. Each of you have your personalities that you bring to this job. You need to explore it, you need to grow in it, you need to be challenged when it's not appropriate. There may be some of you here who have the attitude, "I shouldn't be in charge of anything. All I am is the record keeper." And I like that term, record keeper, rather than minute keeper. But that's not good either. Just as it's not good to think that you got to run the show, it's not good to be sitting on your hands silently watching things fall apart either. We've been called to a higher task, so we need to be challenged on those things. What to do, or did you hope to accomplish as a clerk, needs to be questioned. When you enter into your meetings, what is it that you're looking to achieve? Now, I want to say that I think every clerk can have a different opinion as to what needs to be achieved. But working with another clerk may help you clarify that in your mind so you know when you've actually succeeded and when you have done a good and effective job. And a good and effective job does not mean everybody liked what you did. A good and effective job is that you reach the objectives that you believe your calling is calling you to. I also like having a mentor because it is a wonderful thing to have a safe place to ask stupid questions. I know that I've sat in these rooms and had a ton of stupid questions. Sometimes I've asked them. Most of the time I've sat on them because this is way too big a group to ask dumb questions in. You know, one thing I know as a person who always thinks he should be in charge, I always think I'm the smartest person in the room until I'm proven otherwise. And because I always think I'm the smartest person in the room, I have to guard very carefully that I don't let anybody know that possibly I'm not. So I don't ask the necessary questions. But with one person that I trust, one person that cares about the work I do and how I do that work, I think I could ask those questions. And you know, I think you may be a little bit embarrassed to ask Laura. those silly questions. But they need to be asked, because I'm guessing the silly questions that we don't ask create the nightmares and the headaches in her department. And ultimately, they may create problems for our classes down the road. So I think one of the things a good mentor would do is develop confidence. Develop confidence. So you know what you're doing, why you're doing it. Exploring boundaries. How much do you control? Where do you consult? When do you coordinate? Again, these are all going to fit your personality. About your expectations. Clarifying those expectations. Conforming to the expectations of the classes. And ultimately challenging those expectations when they're out of whack. I think this mentor could also do some training, but I think this is limited. The what, the where, the why, all of those things about forms, relatively available information to us, but they may be able to encourage you along the line of why it's so essential that you're doing these things. The record keeping, the what for, and the how. I served on judicial business for a number of years and actually had the responsibility of chairing that commission. What a difference it made in judicial business when the clerk knew what the clerk was doing. When the clerk knows what they're doing, smooth sailing. It's all laid out before you. You can act on it and act on it appropriately. You really, really matter in that. I think other clerks can assist you. Now, fortunately, most clerks have very limited exposure in matters of judicial business. But the clerks who have had that and know what they're doing need to step up and make themselves available to assist churches. We need to let you know that we can walk you through those particular issues. I hope you go through your entire service as a clerk and never have a judicial business proceeding. That would be marvelous. But how much time would have been saved and heartache and grief if the clerks had simply asked someone else, what should we do? And so those mentoring things are all there. Here are the questions. I think we need a mentoring program. I have no clue how we structure that. Howard is doing one thing, and I'm going to ask him in a minute to talk about that. But do we make this a mandatory thing? Or do we make it a voluntary thing? My gut feeling is mandatory. I hate askings. I think assessments is the way we go on everything. You have no choice. You do what we tell you to do. That's my personality. But I know that doesn't work for a lot of you. So maybe a voluntary system would be helpful. My fear is those who need the help the most probably are the least likely to ask. Is that fairly safe to say? Because you just don't want anyone knowing you don't know what you're doing.
It's terrible.
It is terrible. That's my feeling. You know, because I've been there. But we have each other. We can help each other. We are a covenant community after all. And we ought to trust one another. And I would like to see us willingly volunteer to be a part of this, to make ourselves available. I don't know who coordinates it. Regional Synod seemed like a real good place to start, that if a new clerk comes on, that the Regional Synod clerk might call one of us up and say, you need to shadow this person and work with them for a while. I think that would be a start. I don't know if that's a full solution, but it's something that's out there. Your general feeling. Voluntary, mandatory, yeah.
When you're drinking from a fire hose or trying to stay above water in this new position, to be told you have to find a mentor is just an extra thing.
Great.
If the mandatory needs to be on those who are there already, you go and help that new person.
You are absolutely right.
Don't put it on the new guy or gal.
And I think it's more about creating a culture within regional synods of creating relationships between the clerks. And I feel like I have that already in the Regional Synod of Albany, that we meet together at least twice a year, and especially in that place, it's easy to bring those things. And I don't know, I'm also close to the Regional Synod office, so I'm like there all the time, so I see Bob all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal to say, hey.
We
like,
need
help
to
us with that.
share the methodologies that are working.
Yeah.
And I think that's helpful. I do think we have to realize that geography becomes a major
Right.
issue. Where I see
It
this
is.
working well is where geography is
Right.
not as inconvenient. Although Howard was saying you've got people driving 5 hours to get down to,
Lee Pranger Drive,
To-
to northern Michigan.
yeah, so it can happen, but it's worked for you.
It's working.
It's
yeah.
worked for you, yes.
It seems like so the issue with mandatory is, you can't, there's a whole list of things that goes with it, okay? So this is mandatory, and then I don't do what I'm supposed to do. I'm not good in the mentor relationship, so then what, you're gonna tell my pastor to get rid of me as a stated clerk? So I am suggesting that instead, it should be maybe more sort of practice that when a person becomes a new clerk, kind of like your idea that the regional clerk assigns that person a mentor. And so there's kind of an assumption of mentor. So if the person uses their the mentor, people would have to agree to be mentors. They have to agree, I'm gonna be in contact at least this, there'd have to be some agreements. But then if the clerk rejects the mentoring, then that has to be the way it goes. But I think I just think it gets too legalistic once you say
Yeah, I know.
it's a mandatory requirement that you be mentored, because then if you don't fulfill the requirement, then what? And in addition, it puts an extra, more onus upon the mentor. You know what I'm saying? It just adds a lot.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah. But I think
Personally, I'm so depraved that if there isn't a speed limit, I would go gas all the way to the floor. If there isn't somebody saying to me, you have to do this, I probably wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. But your suggestion is, I think, spot on, that there needs to be an attempt at least that is begun in all of these new clerk situations, so we allow them to develop as the best clerks they can possibly be.
And can I add one other thing? And because, so I didn't realize what the stated clerk really was until I became a stated clerk. So I think that's the other part of it, is that, you see a stated clerk, like I've seen the stated clerk that, that was like the epitome of stated clerk, and then I've seen interesting stated clerk, and I've seen, and so, but you don't really get, to be honest, I didn't really get what it meant to be a stated clerk until I came to the meeting last year. And that was, I was 6 months in. And so, and I still continue. So I'm saying that it's hard to, I don't know how many people really understand when they become stated clerk what it means. So to expect them to be like, oh yeah, I need a mentor, or, I just think we need to continue having a culture of helpfulness and put structures in place that support stated clerks. And if somebody wants to opt out, they get to opt out.
The two other thoughts for me along this line, when you're new and you have the former stated clerk who may be willing to do some of this mentoring, that happens, I think,
Right.
sort of naturally.
Yeah.
I didn't have that at all. So the idea of having some mentoring when I was new, I would have welcomed that 100%. The other thing that I would say is, you have a rather bought-in audience in this room. We've given up, 3 days to be here because we find it valuable and we're invested in being clerks and doing better. Not all of our clerks are here.
Right.
And some never come to this gathering. So the notion of some type of mandatory in that dynamic, while it may be the most needed situation, I'm not sure how that would go over. So I think this is a group where the idea of mentoring we would welcome, because we're here in some sense getting mentoring, but how we communicate that to the folks that either don't ever come or rarely come would be another level of, I don't know if struggle, but maybe issue to think.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking in favor
I
of
want-
this,
I
because
want
I
to say-
really would have loved it as a new clerk.
We are really pleased with the percentage of clerks that came this year.
Right.
This is exceptional, far better than I've seen.
But still 30% of our clerks
I know,
are not here.
I understand that,
But it's a good number.
We have good progress in this.
So maybe it's our privilege to facilitate anything that happens onto the regional synods. Not that our regional synod clerks are looking for more to do, but, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we encounter one another and where we're gonna have less geographical,
In the regional clerk vein, would it be advantageous then, like for the planning committee for next year, would it be advantageous to have a section of our time for regional synods to get together and have all the clerks meet as part of their
Yes.
schedule?
Yes.
That could be a time where that organic, natural
Yeah.
mentoring could begin to occur as well.
Lunch?
Just maybe even more than this lunch.
Yeah, do a block of time, hey, go spend time with your regional synod for the next 90 minutes, and all those clerks from your region, and just spend some time together, talk about issues, what are your challenges, what are best practices.
Can we do
Although
that?
I will say a lot of that happens in real time
Yeah.
as well. It'd be good to get together and talk like that, but a lot of that, at least for us, happens in real time too.
I'm thinking it happens more for you than it does for clerks in general.
Right.
Well, what I do, because Chad's Regional Synod in Mid-America, I'm Ileana Florida classes. We're having a lot of unique upcoming paperwork coming up, and ultimately, my feeling is Chad's responsible for it. I have to make Chad shine his
I
best.
talk to Don like every other day.
Yeah.
We do. And it's because, Florida's gonna be breaking off again, reestablishing. Ultimately, the buck stops at his desk. I need to take care of Chad. That's my attitude. And sometimes I drive him nuts, and sometimes he drives me nuts. It's corporate, that's the way we like to work. But it's an ongoing process. And when I stepped into state clerk, my training was 10 minutes from a trunk of a car.
Right.
Here's the paperwork, there you go. And I called Chad a lot, and I was blessed because my example was Randy Coy. And a lot of the formation of what I do is actually from Randy Coy.
Sometimes it's not good to follow somebody who's really good either.
Yeah,
That becomes a problem.
because I was But I'm just saying that for me, in the process, it's organic. And I'm fine saying I'm stupid.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That's the maturity that I hope I have attained over the years of ministry. When I entered ministry, entered clerking, I was invincible. Now I am evidently vincible in every way, and that's been a positive thing for me to learn. Howard, would you take a moment to talk about your experience with working with the clerks?
Sure. Although I've already heard other people do it, so we're not unique in the Regional Synod. But we get together twice a year, in the fall and the spring, for meetings. And we invite all of our clerks, and most of the meetings, everyone is there. And that's amazing, because other people, most people have other jobs too. We have a few full-time clerks, but most people have other jobs too. And that speaks more loudly than anything. People show up for something, they say must be adding some value. And it's not what I do, it's usually what other people bring to the meeting. And we form agenda together. The way we do it is we have a list of things that people have submitted or I've come up with, or some things are just normal. Every year we're going to talk about consistorial reports and are you having problems and how can we support you, and things like that that are just on the agenda as a matter of fact. But many times it's individuals bringing a case, like, I've encountered this, never had this happen to me before. What would you do in this instance? Or I'm closing a church, help me think through the list again of things that I need to do to make sure that happens correctly. So it's people bringing their real-time needs to the meeting and having 6 other clerks or 7 other clerks in the room that can all share from their experience. And I think that's what is most valuable.
Thank you.
Yep.
To Howard.
Is that meaning just clerks?
It is just clerks of the classes and myself, yes. Although, sometimes we have invited the regional executive to come in, especially when there's something significant going on, like this last meeting, John Messer came in and talked about the Vision 2020 process and answered questions. And really, the clerks themselves can say, we'd like to, since we're in Grand Rapids, we have access to most of the denominational staff, we could say, well, we'd like to meet with Talissa, or we'd like to meet with this person. That's usually rare, but once in a while we'll invite somebody else into the meeting to share a resource. But many times, actually, the most valuable thing in the meeting is people saying, hey, I had this problem and I resolved it. I've used this many times, but Larry Schuyler created something really great I think you all should be aware of. He created a form, or actually a certificate or a form that you would give to someone who is demitting. That means they're voluntarily letting go of their ordination. So they're no longer ordained. Now, it's a scary thing to do. A lot of people don't want to do it even when they should. He created a statement that says basically, this person demitted on this date. They did so voluntarily without any threat of discipline, and should this person decide to enter ministry, the classes would essentially grease the skids. So that's not what the form says, but that's it's similar to that. And if you want to see it, it's on the Holland Classes website, on the classes website. But that's a great example of how a clerk encountered a problem and said, what can we do to make this better? We'll create a statement that we can share with an individual so it's less scary to demit, and it kind of gives them a sense of, okay, I did the right thing and now I've got my ticket back. If I need, it's going to be easier for me to get back in if I decide to be reordained.
I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I want to leave you with this. We need to be thinking about how we can do this. Where it is working, keep working at it. Where it is working, get the news out about what you're doing so others can copy what works. I don't think this is the place where we say, okay, as a group we have now decided Regional Synod executives are responsible for this. No, they may choose to take on this responsibility in a voluntary basis, and I think that could be beneficial to all of us. But if you're not a Regional Synod exec and you notice that Laura posts pretty regularly, we have a new classes clerk, and you get that little notice. Have you ever thought to yourself, boy, I'd like to help that person out? Make note of those names. Ask the question, are they close to me? Do I know anything about them? Would I like to get to know something about them? Volunteer yourself. You don't have to have somebody else demanding it if you care about the well-being of others. And help them to not make the dumb mistakes that you make. Okay? Yes,
Can I add
Laura?
something? When I become aware of a new clerk, I have a form letter that I send out, which is just statements, but then I have an email that starts welcoming them, and I will have known through correspondence with the clerk that is leaving and the clerk that is coming, whether they are going to help each other.
Okay.
And so when I know that, I include that. I said, it sounds like departing clerk is going to be on hand to help you. And, but often that isn't the case. And I don't know what to tell the clerk. So I simply say, I've shared with you a list of all the clerks, and anybody's willing to help you, but they may call another new clerk, and then there's nothing resolved. When it comes to new clerks for the Synod of Albany and the Synod of the Great Lakes, knowing that they already have something in process, I will include something about that. I know the clerks in your synod get together and they're all listed on this roster, you know, avail yourself of their knowledge. It's the other synods that I don't quite know what to say. I would love to hear what people might want that email to say to a clerk who's coming in with no guidance whatsoever. I always say, I'm willing to help you in any way I can, but there's so many things that clerks do that I don't have much knowledge of, so.
In response to that, I want to ask if there are clerks, experienced clerks, wherever you are, who would be willing to meet with somebody by Zoom or over the phone, you know, to be on, not on call, but, you know, available.
What I think would be helpful is, I mean, I often will give people Howard's name or Larry's name because they've said that they would happily help. It would, I think, be nice to have kind of a list of the senior clerks who I could include in the email. These are clerks who have volunteered their services and would be happy, would welcome a call from you should you want to speak with somebody. But then I need people to volunteer that.
You heard that? If you're a senior clerk, that means you get a discount on your coffee. She needs to know your willingness to be of assistance. And, you know, that's one of the channels that these kind of things can work through. And by my saying senior, some of our best clerks are very young.
I said seasoned.
Seasoned, okay. Some of us old people want to keep doing it the way it used to be. I like paper. But the takeaway I hope for all of you is let's get busy with it. Let's just make certain we're helping each other out. And I'm kind of assuming that our regional synod folk will begin talking with each other about how they can best make these things happen in all of the regional synods. But it's an assumption that I'm trusting I'm right about. And I think it'll be beneficial to all of us.
Carey, there's one
Yes.
other option I just thought of, and that is if your region is not doing anything, and you know of, and maybe you've met that person at this meeting, I would suggest that you talk about forming groups of 2, 3, maybe even 5 or 6 people that would meet together on Skype or Zoom, and you could be in New York and California and still pull that off with Skype. And if somebody's got a Zoom account, that's even better. But form your own group and plan to meet twice a year. You could do that, and if you need Laura to coordinate that, I'd suggest sending her an email and saying, I'd like, you know, have you heard from anybody else? But I think if you reach out, there is help available. There are people who are willing to help, and there may be others who, like you, would say, I talked to Carey about this earlier. I thought, well, there's 2 kinds of helping. There's the kind of helping you can get from me by email, which is, I have a specific question, what does the Book of Church Orders say? I will email you back and I will give you the answer. That's really impersonal. might meet the need you have, but you don't sense much support other than that, you got an email from me. You might want to be in a group where you can share what's going on in your personal life and the frustration where you're tearing out your hair at your classes, all the other stuff that might be going through your mind. And you really need somebody that's going to do more than send you an email response.
I included in here a little thing from the Extension Director at Michigan State University on mentoring, and this was for those who were mentoring students on the campus. The points that I think are most valuable in this, it doesn't directly apply to us, but it's about building relationships. If you're going to be an effective mentor, you're not a teacher, you're not a counselor, you're not the resident expert, you're developing a relationship with the person. You allow them to assist you in setting an agenda, if not allow them to set the agenda, and then work with them to find their best clerk within them. So I think those are of value. I want to hand this back to our two presenters on the manual, because we had promised that there would be time for them to answer a number of questions, which I know you're going to have. So they're up. Thanks, guys.